our highlighting and redacting session. So first we're going to deal with the persistent highlight sets. We've talked about these a little bit before. I want to cover a little bit more information. Then we'll get into the redacting features of relativity. And I've added another topic here. There's a lot of going on with regard to audio-visual redaction, which is usually not done in relativity, but before those pieces of evidence are brought into the relativity database, oftentimes they need to be redacted beforehand, and the tools inside of relativity do not enable you to do that, but there are tools out there that you would use before you bring that type of documentation into the relativity collection or database. So I want to deal a little bit with that as well. So let's take a look at persistent highlights in the database. Using persistent highlights is a feature that is enabled by the case manager. These are put into the documents automatically by relativity when they are fed the keywords and terms by the case manager. The colors, meaning this, that, or the other thing, depending on the code that the case manager uses, and you'll be provided with a listing of what this color means when you see it on a word in a document, what that color means. And it will vary from documented, not documented document, but from case to case or installation of relativity to installation. So if you were working with relativity in one law firm, you move over to another, then the persistent highlights, the colors might be different. So you'll be given some kind of a code that indicates what yellow is, what orange is, and so on. So the activating of persistent highlights, the case manager has to do this, and system administrator of the program. Sometimes they're not used at all. If it's a small case, usually you don't go to the trouble of enabling these, but a large case, they are very, very helpful to reviewers to call their eyes and attention to certain phrases and words in the various documents being reviewed. Working with persistent highlight sets and associated terms, something we'll cover in here, and the terms that are associated to the various highlighted items. So they are designated, they're designed to draw your attention as a reviewer to certain words and concepts in the document. So you're going to see that this color, red, is used whenever a particular document has a word in it that is related to something legal. Notice here's litigation. These two terms are considered to be in a family by the case administrator, and they'll call your attention to anyone discussing a legal issue, something that's in litigation, so that right away you can go right to those sections of the document and take a look at those. And then, of course, you see the Enron company is being referred to here in this two subjects, and then down in the document you see it referred to as well. And then we have also LJM deal. That's a different color, calls your attention to the LJM agreement that was made. And so if that's a part of the review process, you'd see that right away. Oh, yeah, I'm supposed to focus in on LGM related documents, and you'd go there to take a look at that. And here's power also being highlighted with the darker blue. So each one of those will have some relevance to your review process, those different colors, and you'll be given a color code by your case manager that indicates what the colors are calling your attention unto. So the persistent highlight sets are not markup sets, and that's an important thing to keep in mind. The difference between persistent highlight sets and markup sets. The persistent highlight sets are going to be, as I said, put in there to call your attention to different possible relevant information. The markup sets are going to be designed to actually code for various issues and other things in the documents. So up here in the interface between you and relativity, there's a ShowHide icon for persistent highlights. And so if we click on this little A with the highlight around it, it will either bring back the persistent highlights if they're not showing up, or it will make them disappear. So one of the things, if you're not seeing any persistent highlights in a particular document, you might think to yourself, uh-oh, I turned this off some time ago because they were kind of distracting me from my redacting process or whatever it was you were doing. And so one thing I like to do when I'm thinking about using the persistent highlights is to click on, when I get a document up that has none of them in it, is to click it to see if they show up, to make sure that I haven't actually turned it off, and then click it to turn it back on again. So that's an off and on switch that you can use. So now also, after you first click on this icon, this one up here, it will show you a list of the persistent highlights and their types. So here we see key terms and hot terms and privileged terms. All of these will have their different colors and a little light bulb in front. We'll get to that in a minute. But you'll notice in front of key terms, there's a plus sign. And that means that there is a listing of the what the key terms are in the documents that we'll be looking at. So we can click on that, and it will show you then a listing that in this particular document, there are 3 key terms that we should focus in on and run, and you can see them over here. If this is a multi-paged email document, a PowerPoint, whatever, it may not, you're not be seeing all of the particular persistent highlights. So if you click here, it'll show the whole list of them, even if you're not seeing them all. And so you only see 3 here, but let's say that said 40. Well, then you know you on this page you only have 3, but there are quite a few more that you're wanting to go to and take a look at. Now up here is your move ahead icon in your interface. So with persistent highlights turned on, you can go to the next document using this, and that should say arrow, not error. Sorry about that, typo. And these highlights will again show up if the key terms are in the next document. So by just clicking there, you'll go through it and see the key terms that might be highlighted in that next document. You can just keep flipping through all the documents that way with these kind of VCR DVD type buttons. But notice when you go to the new document, the tree of the key term privilege and hot terms is updated as well to show you how many times these occur in the new document. So over here now, we are in a different document, an email, and it has a lot of other information in it. Most likely there are possibly some attachments in this particular document. And you'll see that we have a privilege a number of persistent highlighted number 5. And so if you look through the document and look for those, you only see 1 here. That means you're going to be using this toggle up here to drag it down and cursor through this elevator icon all the way down to the bottom to see all of the different persistent highlights. And so you can see all of the different ones that are indicated in this particular, this one particular document that you're looking at. Notice a hot term, market share, is also going to be seen in this particular document as well. We have looked at this ability once before, but I just want to review it with you to turn off persistent highlights. You click on the light bulb in front of the key terms or in front of privilege. So if you just want to see some of the terms, like you just want to see the privileged terms in this document, you turn them off, turn off the key terms here, turn off the hot terms down here, and then you'd only be seeing the colored persistent highlights for this particular category. And why you do that? The answer has to do with distraction and focus. and printing the documents to a PDF file or to a printer. You probably don't want these printing, so you might want to turn them off if you're going to export this document to a PDF file. And so there are some reasons why you would turn off the persistent highlights. For example, if our focus as a reviewer in this review had nothing to do with any of these, the legal terms, had nothing to do with Enron gas or power or UBS, but it had everything to do with trade, we might click off all of these, not turn off all of these in this category, but just take check marks off of those persistent highlights, and turn light bulb off here because there's only one particular privileged key term, legal. And so we could turn that off, and we could come down to the hot terms and turn that off. And then we'd only be seeing the persistent highlights related to that particular key term that has our focus in this review, which would be trade. You know, you see 5 of those persistent highlights. You see they, when I did this, if I click on the key term light bulb, it disappeared. And then to reactivate the key terms for the next document or to take a look at them in this document, you just click the light bulb again. It's a toggle and turns them back on. You also notice that the word legal is still highlighted because it's in a different category, indicating that this term legal might indicate it is possibly a privileged document. That's because it's up here. Doesn't mean it is, but that's what you're looking for to see if it may be a privileged document. And so here I have clicked on the checkbox in front of the word power, and now this key term is no longer highlighted in the document below, even though it shows up. You can see it here because I took the check mark off. It doesn't have the highlight on it. To just show the highlights for one term, as I said, you can proceed by clicking on the words key term here, deselect all, and then the checkbox adjusts one of them, like we see Enron now. So that's all we'd be seeing, and we could take off this legal by clicking on that checkbox there and mark it. We could take that off also. Okay, so that is all I really wanted to cover in terms of the persistent highlights. Again, you do not apply those as a reviewer. They are applied automatically in relativity when your case manager enables those for you. So next, we're going to be covering the various ways of adding redactions and annotations in your documents. The word redact is a verb used with many different features in the English language, of course, suitable for literary form, meaning revise and edit, but in or to draw up a frame or a statement or proclamation. But in the legal realm, we're not actually editing the document or revising it. What we're doing is covering up confidential parts of a text before distribution. So the account number in this case has been redacted from the top of the statement for some confidential reason and privacy reason. Actually, the word redact goes back to the 15th century, Latin word meaning redactus, to bring into organized form, which is not exactly what we do when we do redactions, except we are organizing our documents for a production to the other side. So I guess that would be in keeping with the essential meaning of that word. Now in relativity, we have various topics to cover regarding redactions and highlights. The highlighting of various portions of a document to call attention to these for attorneys to look at is one way of adding some kind of not a redaction, but a focus for the attorney that is going to be looking at these documents after we've done our review. And you're going to be highlighting the various key phrases, subjects, categories of information that you have been given as a reviewer. You're going to be looking for these, and you'll be using possibly different colors of highlights to call attention to these categories of information and the subjects that the attorneys wanted to focus in upon. And then another feature of the relativity program is to actually use redactions that cover up the information with various types of words that can be applied to the actual redact that you do. And then there's something called inverse redactions, which are a little bit more difficult to explain, but I'll show these to you as we go along. It has to do with when you have a very large document and there's only really a portion of it that needs to be shown. The rest of it needs to be hidden. Inverse redactions can come in handy and save a lot of time. And then there are full page redactions that we'll be looking at, and mass redactions when you have quite a few documents that have to be all redacted. There's a quicker way of doing this than doing it one by one, and we'll see that feature in relativity as well. And then once you have done your redactions, you're probably going to be wanting to save it as a PDF, and there's various options in production of the PDF versions of the documents that can include the highlights, include the redactions. You can tell a redaction to be transparent so that if this is a redaction for maybe an attorney to look at to see if maybe you redacted something you shouldn't have, the redaction for that particular attorney and the copy of the PDF will show through. So in sort of a grayed out gray area of the document. We'll see what that looks like as we go forward. So first we'll deal with the highlights and how to use those in relativity. So the purpose of the highlights, catch an attorney's eye. The colored boxes is like, of course, a highlighter pen. There's 6 different colors available in relativity for this purpose: pink, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. One caveat that I will give to you, especially if you have people in your office that are colorblind, the use of blue and purple and the use of orange and reds, various shades, can be a problem for colorblind attorneys. I actually am red-green colorblind to some degree, not radically, but that's one of the problems that you can run into in an office in using highlights to catch an attorney's eye. They may mistake, say, the color orange, to indicate not that the document is responsive, but that it's a smoking gun or something like that. So you've got to be talking in your office about this issue and maybe changing what the colors mean, maybe not using certain colors in your highlighting of the documents to call attention to the attorney's eye. So go ahead with this. We're going to be using orange in this case to call attention to a particular area. So before we highlight, we have to choose the image view option. You're not going to be highlighting in native view. You're not going to be highlighting in viewer mode when you're using the viewer technology that's built into relativity. When you want to highlight a document, you're going to pick the image view mode of that particular document, and you're going to make sure that that the radio button is clicked on. You're not going to be using extracted text, but the image view of the document. So before we begin, we click on that radio button. And so the case administrator can add some contextual help to you. So you can click the question mark over here with the arrow pointing at it to see what highlight colors have been established, what they mean. And we are looking for what color to use for responsive documents. In our case, we're going through, and that's our job, to review the documents for responsiveness to the request for discovery. In this case, the responsive documents regarding email would be from a particular person. Okay, so what we can do when we click on this particular